Welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we're dealing with some pretty heavy material. We're going to be exploring excerpts from chapter 6. It's called Who Are Thine Accusers? From a book where the author recounts their experiences with childhood sexual abuse. And I think the title itself is pretty intriguing, isn't it? It seems to question who's really at fault and kind of hints at the complexities of speaking out about abuse.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It raises a lot of questions right from the start. It points to the victim blaming that often surrounds these cases and the challenges survivors face in being believed and supported.
Right, and it's heartbreaking. To really understand this story, I think we need to go back to the author's early childhood. You know, they describe themselves as a curious kid, but also shy, vulnerable, and a bit of a loner. And
Mm.
I wonder, do you think those characteristics make a child more susceptible to predators?
Well, they can, unfortunately. It's not their fault, of course, but abusers often target children who seem less likely to speak up
Yeah.
or who might crave attention and affection.
Right. And it all starts with this seemingly harmless neighbor. They call her Malu, and she would give treats to all the kids, including the author. It's almost like this detail about treats is setting the stage for what's to come. You know what I mean?
Yes, definitely. It creates a sense of normalcy around the act of receiving treats from adults. And this is a common tactic abusers use, building trust through seemingly kind gestures, especially those involving food. It's a way to lower a child's guard and create a sense of obligation.
It's like setting a trap almost, because later Malu moves away and these young men move into her apartment. And guess what? They continue giving out treats. It's almost like they're intentionally filling that void left by Malu.
Exactly. Abusers often try to seamlessly step into roles previously held by trusted figures. They might even mimic behaviors or offer similar treats to avoid raising suspicion. It's all part of a calculated grooming process.
Right. And then comes the incident. The author misses out on the sweets one day, and one of the men tells them to come back later. It's as if he's deliberately creating this sense of anticipation, making the author more likely to return.
Right, yeah. It's all about manipulation. Making promises, creating a sense of excitement. These are tactics used to lure the child back into a vulnerable situation.
Hmm.
And the author, being young and trusting, doesn't see the danger.
And the author even talks about how their neighborhood was like what they call free-spirited, where kids were allowed to roam freely. No one was like talking to them about the evils of the world. So, they have no reason to be suspicious. I
Yeah.
can't even imagine.
That's an important point, though. While it's wonderful for children to have freedom and a sense of community, it's also crucial to equip them with the knowledge and awareness to recognize potentially dangerous situations. Without that, they're left incredibly vulnerable.
And tragically, that's what happens. The author goes back to the man's apartment, and he assaults them. The language they use to describe the experience is so raw and powerful. It really makes you realize the profound impact this had on them.
Absolutely. The author uses vivid imagery to convey the sensory details of the assault, highlighting the feeling of violation and powerlessness. It's a stark reminder that these aren't just abstract events. They are deeply embodied experiences that can leave lasting scars.
Right, and what's even more heartbreaking is the reaction of the author's mother. She sees them with the man and scolds them for troubling him.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That speaks volumes about the culture of silence and victim blaming that often surrounds abuse. Children are often afraid to speak up for fear of not being believed
Mm.
or even being punished for something that wasn't their fault.
Mm.
And sadly, in this case, that fear was reinforced by the mother's reaction.
Yeah. The author admits they never told anyone what happened, out of fear and shame. It makes you think about how many children suffer in silence because they don't feel safe or supported enough to speak out.
It's a tragic reality, and it highlights the urgent need to create environments where children feel empowered to share their experiences without fear of judgment or reprisal. We need to listen to children, believe them, and offer them unwavering support.
And sadly, this wasn't an isolated incident. 5 years later, there's another assault. This time, it involves a man who promises the author wind balls.
Mhm.
It seems so innocent on the surface, but
Right.
it's just awful.
That's the insidious nature of grooming. Abusers often use language that seems harmless to a child, but has a sexualized double meaning. They exploit a child's innocence and naivety to manipulate them into vulnerable situations.
And the author even admits they didn't understand the suggestive nature of his questions about balls. They were just excited about getting these toys.
Yeah. This is a clear example of how abusers deliberately blur the lines to desensitize children to sexual topics
Yeah.
and make their advances seem less threatening. It's a form of psychological manipulation designed to gain trust and compliance.
Ugh, it's sickening to think about that someone would do that to a child.
It is. It's truly horrific.
So, we've talked about the grooming tactics and the impact of victim blaming. But what about the long-term consequences of trauma? How did these experiences affect the author later in life?
Well, that's what we're going to delve into next. The author's story doesn't end with these assaults. The trauma continued to manifest in various ways throughout their life, affecting their physical health, their relationships, and their overall sense of self.
Okay, well, let's take a break here, and when we come back, we'll continue exploring the author's journey and discuss the long-term effects of childhood sexual abuse.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're back. And we left off talking about the author's experiences with childhood sexual abuse and how the trauma really affected them in so many ways. Can you talk a little bit about how those early experiences manifested later in life for them?
Yeah, so the author went to the man's house expecting to get these wind balls and was assaulted again. And there's this incredibly disturbing detail where the abuser uses a Rastafarian tam to wipe the author afterwards. And I can only imagine how that image must have stayed with them.
Right. It's chilling to think about how calculated these abusers can be. They prey on a child's innocence and use it against them.
It speaks to how trauma can embed itself in seemingly ordinary objects. The tam, in this case, could become a trigger for the survivor, bringing back vivid memories and feelings associated with the abuse. Even years later, something as simple as seeing a Rastafarian tam could potentially cause anxiety, flashbacks, or even a panic attack.
Yeah, it's a reminder that the effects of trauma can be so far-reaching and unpredictable. And this second assault led to years of suffering for the author, both physically and emotionally. They developed leukorrhea and intense itching, which made them withdraw from others, and even strained their relationship with their sister.
Right, and this is a crucial point. The impact of sexual abuse often extends far beyond the immediate trauma. It can manifest in physical health problems, emotional distress, and difficulties forming healthy relationships. The author's experience with leukorrhea and itching. It's a clear example of how trauma can affect the body as well as the mind.
Yeah, think about how isolating that must have been. Not only are you dealing with the trauma of the abuse, but you're also experiencing these physical symptoms that no one seems to understand. And you're a teenager, already navigating a complex social world.
Absolutely. The author's withdrawal from others and the strain on their relationship with her sister highlight the ripple effects of trauma. It can impact every aspect of a survivor's life, making it difficult to connect with others, trust people, and feel safe in the world.
It's a reminder that healing from trauma is a journey, not a destination. There's no quick fix. It takes time, support, and often professional help to work through the complex layers of pain and reclaim a sense of agency.
Exactly. And it's crucial to remember that every survivor's journey is unique. There's no right or wrong way to heal. Some people find solace in talking about their experiences, while others prefer to process their trauma through art, music, or physical activity.
There's a glimmer of hope in this part of the story, though. When the author is 16, their aunt takes them to a doctor who recommends golden seal as a treatment for the leukorrhea. It's interesting how even this seemingly positive event leads to more complexity.
It does. While it's positive that the author found some relief from their physical symptoms, it also raises questions about the potential long-term consequences of using certain herbal remedies. The author later discovered that long-term use of golden seal can cause anxiety.
And that's where it gets really interesting, right? The author wonders if their own struggles with anxiety, which they've dealt with for years, could be connected to the golden seal. Do you think that's possible?
It's certainly a question worth exploring. We know that trauma itself can lead to anxiety and other mental health challenges, but it's also possible that the golden seal, while helping with one symptom, could have inadvertently contributed to another. It highlights the complex interplay of physical and psychological factors in the aftermath of abuse.
It also makes you think about the importance of seeking professional medical and psychological help when dealing with trauma. There are so many potential layers to unpack, and sometimes self-treatment, even with natural remedies, can have unintended consequences.
Absolutely. Trauma is complex, and healing often requires a multifaceted approach. Seeking professional guidance can provide a safe and supportive space to address both the physical and emotional aspects of the experience.
Right. And the author ends this excerpt with a really poignant statement about their ongoing struggles with odors. They say they are intolerant of anything that smells offensive, and rely heavily on perfumes to mask any potential smells from their own body. It seems like this sensitivity to smell might be connected to the trauma they experienced.
Yeah, that's a very insightful observation. Remember how we talked about how trauma can embed itself in sensory experiences? Well, our sense of smell is directly linked to the emotional center of our brain. So it's very possible that certain smells, perhaps even those associated with the assaults, could trigger anxiety, flashbacks, or feelings of shame for the author.
It's almost like they're trying to create a barrier of scent. To protect themselves from further harm or judgment, they're constantly on guard, hyper aware of any potential odor that might be perceived negatively. It's a subtle but powerful manifestation of the trauma they've endured.
And it speaks to the enduring nature of trauma. Even years later, survivors might find themselves struggling with seemingly unrelated issues that stem from their experiences. These struggles can manifest in various ways, from sensory sensitivities to relationship challenges, to difficulty regulating emotions.
The author's experience is a powerful reminder that healing is a continuous process, and there will be ups and downs along the way.
Yes, and it's a reminder that we as a society need to be more compassionate and understanding of the long-term effects of trauma. Survivors need our support, not judgment, as they navigate their healing journeys.
It's amazing how something like a scent can hold so much power.
Mhm.
For the author, it became this source of like both comfort and anxiety. They used perfumes to create a sense of control and mask any perceived flaws, but it also served as this constant reminder of their vulnerability.
Yeah, it's like they were trying to erase the past,
Wow.
but the past was still very much present in their everyday life. It's a poignant reminder that trauma doesn't just disappear. It can linger in unexpected ways, affecting our thoughts, behaviors, and even our senses.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me. We've explored the author's experiences with childhood sexual abuse, the grooming tactics used by the abusers, the devastating impact of victim blaming, and the long-term consequences of trauma, both physically and emotionally. It's heavy stuff, but it's so important to talk about these issues and understand the complexities of healing.
Absolutely. The author's story highlights the importance of breaking the silence surrounding abuse. It's a call to action for all of us to be more aware, more empathetic, and more supportive of survivors.
What's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from this conversation?
I think the most crucial takeaway is the power of belief. We need to believe survivors when they share their stories. We need to create spaces where they feel safe to speak their truth without fear of judgment or shame.
So much of the author's pain stemmed from not being believed, first by their mother, and then by others who dismissed their physical symptoms. It's a reminder that our words and actions can have a profound impact on survivors, either helping or hindering their healing process.
Right. And beyond belief, we need to offer support. We need to listen without judgment, validate their experiences, and connect them with resources that can help them heal.
This deep dive has really emphasized the importance of creating a culture of support for survivors.
Mm.
It's not enough to just be aware of the issue. We need to actively work towards changing the systems and attitudes that perpetuate abuse and silence.
And that starts with education. We need to teach children about body safety, consent, and how to recognize unhealthy behaviors. We need to empower them to speak up if something feels wrong.
It's about creating a world where children feel safe, supported, and believed. And it's about ensuring that survivors have access to the resources and care they need to heal and thrive.
Exactly. Healing is possible, but it takes a collective effort. We all have a role to play in breaking the cycle of abuse and creating a more just and compassionate world.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We know it was heavy, but we hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. If anything we discussed resonated with you, please remember that you're not alone. There are resources available to help, and we've included some in the show notes.
And if you know someone who might be struggling, please reach out to them. Offer your support, listen without judgment, and encourage them to seek help if they need it.
Until next time, take care and keep learning.